All right, good morning and welcome everyone to our 2023 Youth Involvement Conference. My name is Sophia Sackets. I'm a sophomore at Newport and I'm also a YouthLink board member this year.
And my name's Richard Lee. I'm your YouthLink board co-chair, and your Bellevue Youth and Council co-president. With us as well are our two other YouthLink Council members,
Liam and Daniel.
All right, thanks, Richard. Hey, everyone. My name is Liam Kroll. I'm on the Bellevue Youth Council Executive Committee as the co-vice president, and I'm from Interlake High School.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Daniel Domingos. I serve as the BYC co-secretary, and I'm a Bellevue Youth Link board member for this year.
Before we begin, we want to thank everyone for being a part of our conference. We have a lot of wonderful things in store for you, but first we want to take this time to share a land acknowledgement for the space we occupy and stand on. So the City of Bellevue acknowledges that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, including the Duwamish, Suquamish, Muckleshoot Indian, and Snoqualmie Indian tribes. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. We would also like to share this additional statement from the Duwamish tribe. It is important to note that this kind of land acknowledgement is not a new practice developed by colonial institutions. Land acknowledgement is a traditional custom dating back centuries for many Native communities and nations. For non-Indigenous communities, land acknowledgement is a powerful way of showing respect and honoring the Indigenous peoples of this land on which we work and live. Acknowledgement is a simple way of resisting the erasure of Indigenous histories and working towards honoring and inviting the truth.
And before we introduce our keynote speaker and share more about today's conference, we want to ask our Bellevue City Manager, Brad Miyake, to share some few words this morning. Please help in welcoming our City Manager, Brad Miyake.
Thank you so much. Is this on? Can you hear me? Oh, there you go. Hey, thank you so much, Richard. And hey, you know, to put something like this on, it takes a lot of work. And we have lots of staff people here. I want to recognize, especially the leaders here. Patrick Alina, as you know, I'd like to give him a round of applause. I also saw Tony Esparza out there working. She's probably working, trying to keep things moving here as well, but she's a big part of this, as well as Marcus and Justin from our DEI group here. Can you raise your hands? Yeah, let's give them a round of applause as well. And I see Gwen Rousseau there. I don't know if you're supporting the event or not, but from our community development department. I know, and if I've missed anybody, I apologize, but thank you guys for all being here. And so, good morning. This is a very exciting conference. How many? Can I get a show of hands of how many of you have been to City Hall? Okay. A lot of you have not been here. Well, we just welcome you here today for the 2023 Youth Involvement Conference. As they mentioned, my name is Brad Miyake. I'm the city manager here, and as I mentioned before, we're just super happy to be hosting you here today. It's really an honor to be part of this event that's been organized by the Youth Link members, and for looking at just currently what's going on in the city as well as the future. Bellevue Youth Link, for those of you who don't know, has a really deep history and roots in Bellevue. It's been around for 33 years, and this conference has been part of Youth Link since the inception of Youth Link since that time. What's really cool is that the program, the Youth Link program itself, offers youth an opportunity for public service by serving the Bellevue community in lots of different roles and for gaining connections with really aspiring youths in the community. And where a lot of the planning and work happens is with the Youth Link board, which consists of 12 youth and 6 adults, which is an advisory board to me as the manager for providing policy input and policy development. And I know we have a number of members here today from the adults. Can you raise your hands who are here? Let's give them a round of applause too. You know, what the board does, Youth Link board and Youth Link itself does, it really provides a lot of good information and support to us at the city by providing us, great input into what's happening at the youth level and what we at the city could do in terms of serving the youth and serving the community better. So, you have a really exciting day ahead of you today, with lots of opportunities to hear from some really good speakers, interesting speakers, and to learn about what's happening at the city here. But more importantly, what we really want to hear is from you. We want to hear your voice and what you think about some of the important topics that are happening not just in the city, but society in general. So this is your day, as we said, to rebuild, reconnect, and reimagine the future of Bellevue. So on behalf of the city manager's office and on behalf of the city council and the other leadership in the city, just welcome to City Hall and have a great day.
All right, let's thank our city manager, Brad Miyake, for those words again. Thank you very so much. All right, everyone, are you getting excited? Are you ready for today? Let's please introduce and welcome our keynote speaker, Christian Page. Now, Christian Page is an Emmy-nominated spoken word poet, a professional speaker, and educator who speaks at schools and conferences across the entire United States. He has spoken to hundreds of thousands of people and loves to work with young people who are committed to creating good in this world. So Christian is a first-generation college graduate and Act II scholar and is passionate about community, anti-racism, equity, and empowerment. He's spent his career in and around education advocating for historically marginalized populations and working to create equitable environments where young people can thrive. Christian's work has appeared on national stages, on television, and in museums exhibits. He's one of the top youth speakers in the Pacific Northwest and is born and from straight out of Tacoma, Washington. So let's please welcome Christian.
Yo, good morning, everyone. Ooh, this is the part where you say good morning back. Good morning, everyone. All right, all right. Can I talk spicy to you early? Is that fair? Right. If I talk to you today, please feel okay talking back to me. I worked in Bellevue schools for a while, and I know that you all are very studious. You all are very brilliant individuals, and I know that sometimes we've been socialized that in classrooms that whoever has the microphone is the person that we're supposed to be paying attention to, but I don't want you to forget that today is about your voice, right? So please don't be afraid to use it. So when I say good morning to you, you can say, awesome, awesome. Man, I'm really excited to have the opportunity to be here with you all today. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Before I tell you anything, before I tell you about things that you should be doing, before we do any of that, I always believe as an educator, right, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And people don't really care about the things that you have to share with them until they know that you're human too. So can I share some things about my life with you? Is that okay? If you all said no, there wasn't really a plan B. But I'd like to share with you a little bit about who I am, right? I realize that this is the way that I operate. I know that we're in city council chamber space, but I show up as relatable and as I think beautiful as I possibly can. I think it's strange, right, that if my job is to be in community with folks, that I would wear clothing or present myself in a way that feels aloof or distant. And you all heard where I'm from. It's my favorite place on the planet. I grew up in the city of Tacoma, right? I'm just down the road from you. I'm not far. I grew up in a time period that some people would consider to be a little bit rough in that space. I'm a little bit old, right? I'm post-young. I'm not old. Sometimes people think that I'm still in high schools when I go there, but conversation for another time. But I grew up in a time period, right, where there were some really cool things that were happening in the city of Tacoma. There were also some not so awesome things that people were saying about us, right? Y'all ever said something bad about Tacoma before? Don't raise your hand. Then I'll have to say something bad about you. I'm joking. I grew up there, and at the time period, as I was getting ready to walk into high school, there were local and national newspapers who were writing about us, and they were not saying kind things. Anybody ever underestimated you before? Show of hands in the room. Anybody ever said something about you that may not have been true? right? There were a lot of folks who were writing about us and saying things to the effect of, all 7 of the comprehensive high schools in that district are dropout factories. They plastered data and statistics everywhere. They said that only 60% of the students in our schools would graduate. They said that the projected rate of graduation for brown or black bodies was below 50%, right? They spoke really ill of the individuals who were present in that space. But what I realized in that time period is that one of the most important beliefs in the world are the things that we believe about ourselves, right? And so there was a bit of a renaissance that occurred during this time. There was a teacher who taught at what people thought was the worst district or the school in the district, right? He was a math teacher, and he was tired of seeing his students be spoken about in that way, right? What he understood is that the students probably knew the solutions better than anybody else, right? One of the things that we often don't tell young people, adults, close your ears for a quick second. One of the things that we don't tell young people enough is that some of the best movements that have happened on this soil, some of the most important things that have happened in this country have come about because young people were willing to be vocal, right? There's not really a civil rights movement in the way that we know it if you don't have the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee or the Freedom Riders, right? Education doesn't look the way that we know it when we talk about representation if it's not for a group of students at Berkeley, right? Young people's voices have always been important in this conversation, and the teacher that was at Lincoln High School knew this, right? He started a tutoring program in his garage, which felt a little rinky-dink, right? But anything that we can do within our sphere of influence is important, right? The program in the garage became a 501c3, it became a nonprofit, and he found himself courageous enough to step to colleges and college presidents and tell them that if they were invested in community in the way that they said they were, that they might want to put some of their money where their mouth is. And they created a program that was called Act 6. The program sent students from our community, right, to colleges across the state and some of those top colleges with the hopes that we would come back to our communities and transform things, right? The reason why I'm in front of you today is because somebody saw me as valuable, important before I knew that about myself, right? I was one of the recipients of that program, of that scholarship, participated in the program, found myself home, and a lot of the ways that you all are thinking about your community, found myself thinking about my community, and was a part of a network and team of individuals who were interested in transforming our neighborhoods. Now, somebody in the room, I know that you all are in middle school and high school. Some of you may be interested in industrial and organizational psychology or public policy or things of that nature. And what I would offer to you is that a lot of times when we talk about change from one thing to another, how many of you all know that that takes time? How many of y'all get impatient? Right, and sometimes we want to see change happen tomorrow, and in normal schemes of things, sometimes it takes somewhere between 5 and 15 years to see a shift like that. When I walked into high school, it was 2007. By the time 2017 rolled around, we found ourselves in classrooms, we found ourselves in boardrooms, we found ourselves as leaders of nonprofits, we found ourselves all across the city implementing the change that we wanted to see in the world, and we were the humans who modeled that first. By the time 2017 rolled around, our school district had surpassed a 90% graduation rate. Right? There's one person who wanted to clap, I see you. Had surpassed a 90% graduation rate, and that gap that I talked about in between Black and brown students and their counterparts closed. In today's day, right, we're over 92% in terms of graduation rate. And one of the most beautiful things in the planet, I want you all, if you take nothing else that I say, take this home. Your voice has authority. You all understand your lived experience better than anybody else can. The folks in this room who are adults do not know what it means to be a 14-year-old in high school right now in this moment. Do you all know that? I'm just making sure, right? Like sometimes we try to hold or maintain this idea of control and authority as adults when actually we need you. We need your ideas. We need your voices. We need you to actually be the people who are leading some of these conversations. And here's why. Please take this home in your pocket. Is that the best change in the world happens when the experts in the field find themselves paired with the experts in the need. And our job as experts in the field or adults is to be in relationship with the experts in the need until it's their time to become the expert in the field. Do you get what I'm saying? So to give you an example is that in my home district, right, there's some spaces where we have students who are experiencing homelessness, right? And for a long time, right, there were ideas, there were policies that were passed by adults, there were ideas from people who had never experienced that kind of hardship in their lives. And now, because of the program that we've talked about, right, there are principals who are in spaces who have had that lived experience, who are creating policy, right, who are creating practice in order to get students out of that situation because they actually know what it's like to be them. What I'm offering to you all is that the experience that you have in this world is valuable, and it's the thing that we need to actually create change in the communities that we live in. Fair prayer, sir. You all hearing what I'm saying? Right? I know that you're a studious group. Feel free to talk back to me. It's okay. Right? But one of the things that we'll have to do, friends, is that we'll have to be people, if we want to find ourselves making change in the way that change has been made, if we want to find ourselves being leader in that space, if we want to find ourselves in public policy or civic engagement or changing our communities, is that we got to focus on us first. Can I tell y'all some embarrassing stuff about me? Is it fair? Will you all have my back if I do? I've had some bad habits in my life. Does anybody in here have bad habits? All right, most of us are perfect. That's okay. No, but I've had some bad habits in my life. And when I was growing up, especially as a kid, right, there's some bad habits that have followed me. Does anybody have trouble, like, remembering to take things out of their pockets? Right? I'm that person. Does anybody lose their phone or their wallet often? Yup, that's me too. Does anybody overbook themselves or overcommit to things? You want to be everywhere and doing all of the things at once? You find yourself in FOMO? You want to have all the leadership positions? Yes, no, maybe so? Oh, please don't be fake this morning. Right? But those are habits that I've had for as long as I can remember. And here's how I know that they've existed. Right? When I was a young person, I had what was called a starter jacket. All the adults in the room are nodding. It would be the equivalent of like an essentials hoodie now. Maybe? Right, okay, I see some head nods. People know what I'm talking about. And I remember it was a Charlotte Hornets starter jacket. It was my favorite jacket. My brother would vouch for me. And I left a Sharpie in the front pocket. And my jacket went through the washing machine. You all feel my pain, right? Right, and it ruined it, right? And it was because I had unchecked habits that didn't serve me, right? Can I tell you all that followed me into my adulthood? Right, I would often be the person, you all don't burn CDs in these days. I feel old talking today. But I would make a CD, it'd be my favorite mix ever, right? And then I would lose the CD. Right, and I would have to cry because then you all don't know how much time it took. You have Apple Music these days. But it was difficult, right? And I'll tell you that followed myself into the future as well. Right, and I had a habit of overbooking, want to be everywhere at once, and sometimes I'd have to cancel plans on my friends and things like that, right? And that followed me, and all of these things collided about 2 months ago. Has anybody ever been to a concert before? Do you all have favorite artists? If your parents paid for the Taylor Swift concert, they love you. But I was on my way to a concert. I was really excited about it. But all of my habits followed me. Y'all stick with me. Someone's wondering what this has to do with leadership. I promise we're about to turn the corner. Right? I'm in this space of wanting to really go to this concert. I'm a father now, right? And I made the mistake of double booking and even triple booking myself sometimes. But on this day, I was supposed to go to a concert. My daughter also had to be at a birthday party. My family only has one car, right? Both of the car seats are in the back of the car. Right, my wife also needs that car. And so I'm like, okay, here's what the plan is we'll take the car to the birthday party. I'll take an Uber from the birthday party to go to Seattle, to go to the concert, right? I'll ride back with one of my friends and everything will be smooth. You all are laughing because you know this plan is not going to pan out, right? So I get there, I stay for about an hour at the birthday party, and then, like Ubers go up in price as the time changes. So I'm really ready to overpay for this Uber now, right? And my wife and I had to buy my daughter soccer cleats because she had a game coming up, and I went and put them in the car. So my wife is a valuable voice in my life, and she goes, baby, make sure you put the keys in my purse before you leave, right? One of the things that you all should know is that your relationship with feedback is going to be really important as a leader. And the thing that I told her is I said, I got it, right? My wife says again, baby, make sure those keys land in my purse before you go. You know we only have one car, right? The reason why we only have one set of keys to the car is because the other were in a pair of pants that I washed and now no longer work. You all are seeing how this habit doesn't serve me, right? And so I leave the birthday party, I get in the overpaid Uber, right? We get in line, right? We go to the concert, we're standing there, we're getting ready to go through like the metal detector when you first walk into the space, and I do the universal dance that everybody does before they leave somewhere. Do you all know the universal dance that I'm talking about? Oh yeah, right? There's some folks know, right? The phone, wallet, keys dance. And I'm patting all of my pockets, and I'm looking my friend directly in the face. Please don't break eye contact with me, you got me? Right? And I reach into my pocket. Oh, you're breaking eye contact. I need you, my friend. I look my friend directly in the face, and I pull out the keys to the car in Tacoma that has both car seats in the back that my wife needs to drive home. I saw exactly 0 minutes of that concert. Right? And the reason why I tell you all this story is because when we talk about change, when we talk about leadership, when we talk about all of these things, that this is not a game of intensity, this is a game of consistency. And whatever we consistently do will be the results that we produce. And sometimes we find ourselves in leadership positions with habits that we have not yet checked. And I'm not coming here to talk to you about what you should be doing. I only talk from a space of arrogance if I know it from a space of exhaustion. And I'm telling you, these are mistakes that I've made in my journey that I hope that you don't have to make or learn by experience. Can I tell you all about some bad habits that leaders have had, that I have had, as we're talking about trying to create change? Is that fair? And the reason why is because I want you to see every minute of every concert that you want to go to. But I also want you to be really effective leaders in your space, and I know that habits are the things that control that. The first habit that I see a lot of people fall into is that we get into a game of competition over collaboration. Right? There are some organizations in this world who are nonprofits who are fighting for the same dollars to do the same thing to funnel through their organization and not someone else's. And we could find ourselves collaborating with those people instead. How many of you care a lot about your GPA in the room? One of the ways in which we're conditioned, particularly in schools, right, is that the goal at the end of the story is to be the valedictorian. But in order for me to be the valedictorian, I have to be better than everyone else. What I'm telling you is that there are some spaces for competition, but if you're going to be a leader and you're going to be transforming a city, if you're going to find yourself doing civic engagement, you're going to have to collaborate more than you compete. And the reason why this is important, y'all, is because sometimes we'll find ourselves in a game of trying to outdo someone, and because of that, we miss on opportunities to actually serve the people who we're supposed to be in service to. Please don't find yourself in competition when you could find yourself in collaboration, especially in a place where people have limited resources. The more that we can come together, the more that we can work as a unit, the more that we can work arm in arm and hand, the better outcomes we could have. Here's the second thing, right, is please don't find yourself, and I said this earlier, thinking that this is a game of intensity and not a game of consistency. How many of you all realized what happened during the pandemic when George Floyd died? There's a lot of difficulty and unrest in our country. Yes? No? Maybe so? Right? Ooh, you all didn't know that the pedal was getting ready to get put to the floor. Right? And there was a lot of intensity that occurred for about 2 months. Ooh, I came to talk spicy to you all today. Is that okay? Can I still be your friend afterward? Right? And there was a lot of black box energy that you all saw on Instagram. Right? And there were a lot of people who were interested in training during that 2 months. And there were a lot of people who found themselves like trying to lean into a conversation, and when that 2 months or that quarter or that 6 months or that box was checked, right, people found themselves going back to business as usual. What I would offer is that our work is a game of consistency. There are some people who have been doing the same thing in the same community for 30 years, and now the corner is finally being turned. What I would offer you is that if you find yourself interested in justice or leadership or community engagement or trying to transform a community, oftentimes you will plant seeds of trees that you will never see the shade of. And it's still important for you to do it. If the work is only about me, about how I can benefit, about how it can serve us right now, about how I can get a gold star from it, none of those things will serve you in the long term. What I'm offering to you is that we have to be people who are consistent and find ourselves with our feet planted in the same community for a long time, sometimes if we want to see change. Can I tell you how this has happened in real time so I don't sound hypocritical? Yes, no, maybe so. Right? We talked about the community that I came from. We talked about people investing in us. And one of the things that I was really aware of when I was a young person growing up in schools is that there were not a lot of people in the education space who reflected me. Right? There was not a lot of curriculum, right, in the space who reflected me. And I realized that at 13 or 14 years of age. Can I tell you all how old I am now? Yes, you promised not to be like, dang, we're good? Right, so I'm 30. Thank you. He said, that's young. I dig it, right? Sometimes I don't feel that. But what I'll offer you, my knees sometimes, anyway. What I'll offer you, right, is that the program that I'm getting ready to tell you about just now happened in my 30th year of age. I told you all we started this conversation when I was 13 or 14 years old. And one of the things that we consistently ask for as students, right, is there ways in which we can change are there ways in which educators could come into the space who reflected our experience? Are there, right? And I wasn't fortunate enough to have that experience. And one of the things we were consistently met with, you all, if I say the term petty in here, do you all know what I'm talking about? There's some times where we have to be petty in our conversation with adults. Don't let me get you in trouble, right? Always be respectful, right? But there are some things where we know things are not true. Ooh, the adults are about to kick me out. This is the last, yeah. Right? But I found myself in this space, and one of the things that we were consistently told as young people is we would love to have educators that reflect you. But there's just not enough qualified candidates. Anytime that you are confronted with a barrier or a half-truth or something you know not to be true, the question you should always ask adults, the question when you all are adults, the question you should always ask the person creating the barrier is, so what should we do next? You said there weren't enough qualified candidates. Why aren't there enough? Right? Might it be because some cost of attendance on college campuses is $70,000 a year? Might it be because we haven't done anything outside of LinkedIn to try to hire people? Might it be because, right, for us to be able to dive into those solutions, ask, so what should we do then? Because I'm not willing to accept no for an answer. Again, a game of consistency. I have to be here for the long term. And I would tell you all that we practiced a game of interest convergence, leaned into different places in our community who had problems that needed to be solved. And everybody now, again, after that conversation in 2020 and 2021, is looking for a way for their workforce to reflect their community. And because we knew this conversation, because we had prepared ourselves, because we could look into the future, because we knew what we were asking for, we were able to approach Tacoma Public Schools, Pacific Lutheran University, and a nonprofit organization in a way that served all three of them. And there's a program that's now been created called Seed Teachers. And for the next 5 years, I assume it's going to go longer than this once they see the fruit of their impact, we'll send 20 students to Pacific Lutheran University from our school district, from marginalized communities, on a debt-free education to receive 4 years of work experience in the district and to be in the front line to be a teacher in our district. There's like 3 people. Now, I know some of you in this room may be excellent at math, right? I was 13 when I saw this as a problem. It's been 17 years of having the same conversation. And now at 30, there's an opportunity for this to come to fruition. This is a game of consistency. And the best part about this, y'all, is I have a daughter at home who's 3 years old. And there's a likelihood that one of the students who participates in the Seed Teacher program, who has big, beautiful, curly hair just like my daughter, will be her teacher when she walks into elementary school. It didn't change my schooling experience. I'll never go back to I'm not going back to high school, y'all. I won't be the person who experiences that shade, but because of the wave that we created, the next generation of people who come behind us will benefit from it. I know that we did a land acknowledgement earlier today, but I think one of the best ways in which we can honor First Nations and our indigenous people is by keeping their wisdom alive. One of the best pieces of First Nations or indigenous wisdom that I've gotten in my life is something called the seventh generation. And it says that the work that we do in this world should honor the 7 generations that have come before us and should make way for the 7 generations of people who come after us. And when I understand that the work that I do in this space are legacy decisions, I move with a little bit more intention. You all get what I'm saying? This is a game of intensity and not a game of consistency. Here's the last thing, is please don't find yourself doing this work without imagination. Can I talk really spicy to you? Like, are you sure? Like, you might kick me out. Is that okay? Right? I think as young people in particular, and this is me projecting on me, not me throwing this on you. I think as young people in particular, we got really good at naming problems. How many of y'all can name a problem when you see one? Right? How many of y'all know how to do a root cause analysis on a problem? Right? How many of y'all have been real vocal about some problems that you've seen before? Right? Oh, you did that with some force too. I see you, right? And so sometimes, right, like we get really good at knowing problems. I was in a particular space, which will remain unnamed. I was really good at naming these problems. I'd done all the root cause analyses. I'd come up with the quantitative and qualitative data to prove my points. This was like Harvard level slides, right? Like I'm pulling up, like I'll be able to name it all the way through. And I had the responsibility to report to the leadership. The leadership at this time was a board, right? And I pull up to the board like, and here's y'all's problem. Y'all ever had this energy before? Right? And that's not how I presented myself, right? Like I came with my best suit and my beautiful haircut and all of these things. And right, I did the dance and this is how it goes. And if you look at this and we overlap this with this data and if we disaggregate, and I used all of my big words and everything that came along with it, and the board said, yo, you're right. And I was not prepared for them to say that. And here's the next question that they asked me. Paige, what do you think we should do about it? And I had no slides. I had no information to be able to share with them, right? Because I was so focused on admiring and naming the problem, and everything around me at that time, when we talked about creating change in the world, started with D. Deconstruct, dismantle, right? Like we could go all the way through those worlds, like all of these different things, like all of the language around tearing something down, about removing problems. And I'll never forget, there's a guy named Jarrell who lives in South Seattle, and he said this in one of our professional developments. He said, to a T, he said, I don't ever get to tear something down unless I've spent just as much time imagining what I would replace it with. I think it's valuable for us young people. I know sometimes like we get told not to have a big imagination. How many of y'all have been told that your dreams are too big, right? That maybe your ideas are not your own, that someone else gave those to you, right? Or something along those lines. But young people, we have to be people of imagination because that's the only thing that's ever changed the world. One of my friends, her name is Brooke Brown. She was Teacher of the Year, I believe, in 2020. OSPI stole her from the neighborhood, but I'll talk about that later. And one of the things that she says, when we do the work of justice, we're actually doing work that is rooted in science fiction. And the reason being is that we've seen a lot of examples of how this works before, but we've never actually lived in the world that we want to live in. And it's going to take someone imagining a new solution that hasn't shown up yet. When you hear adults use the word best practice, push them a little bit, right? Because sometimes we have to be the trailblazers in this conversation. So what I'll offer to you all, right, is please don't get caught up in any of the habits that we've seen before. Make sure that you're willing to collaborate, right? Make sure that you're willing to be consistent in a place over time. And make sure that you hold your imagination central. This is the last story that I tell y'all before I get out of here. But it was the most impactful day of my life. Have y'all ever met one of your heroes before? Yes, no, maybe so? Oh, man, this would be cool. I'm calling it into existence for you now. But when you meet one of your heroes and you realize that they put on their sneakers the same way that you do, it's a really humbling experience. In my senior year of college, I got the opportunity to be, I was selected by a committee to be the student speaker at the governor's prayer breakfast. So it was a really big deal. I was the first person in my family to go and graduate from a four-year institution. I had navigated the space, and it felt like something super cool to be able to put the crown jewel on this. What I found out is that the person who was the adult speaker in that space was going to be a man by the name of Dr. Andrew Young. Do we know who Dr. Andrew Young is in this room? There's a couple of us. Do we know who Dr. Martin Luther King is? All right. Ooh, I was about to have to talk to a history teacher. So Dr. Martin Luther King, we all know who Dr. Martin Luther King, Dr. Andrew Young was one of Dr. Martin Luther King's best friends. They had disagreements on practice and policy, and right, like you can go back and I'll save the reading for you. You got some homework over this weekend. What I'll offer you is that Dr. Andrew Young was a hero in his own right, and he was the closest that I would get to Dr. Martin Luther King in my life, right? I went to go deliver this speech. When I went in, my bacon and eggs was next to the governor's bacon and eggs, was next to Dr. Andrew Young's bacon and eggs. And the bacon was so good, right? Story for another time. I go up and I'm supposed to give my speech, right? I got 3 minutes because I'm on the governor's time, so I have to talk really quickly, right? And I go up and I give this speech about how apathy doesn't serve us and how we can collaborate with people and how we can lean into and all of these different things. And when I finished, there's about 3,000 people in this room. And there's a standing ovation, right? And I'm like, whoa. Y'all ever hit a home run in front of one of your heroes before? You all spell the word at the spelling bee and win? Or you hit the game winner like a buzzer beater, or there's a feeling of exhilaration, or you might be at your orchestra event, right? Like, and like, you know you did what you were supposed to do. And so I kind of walk off the stage like, yeah, right? And I'm having this moment, and everybody's clapping, and there's a standing ovation, and they wait for me to sit down, and Dr. Andrew Young's turn is up next, and he goes up on stage, and as everyone is clapping, he asks the room to be quiet. Y'all ever been having fun and adults come in the room and tell you to be quiet? Right? Have you ever felt like you're in trouble before? You all know what I'm talking about? So he's like, ooh, and I'm like, oh, snap. Like, did I say something wrong? Like, did I name one of the dates incorrectly? Like, what happened? And he goes up on stage, and y'all, I will never forget this day. He looks me directly in my face. My friend, can I ask you what your name is? Yes, you. Rishi? Rishi. Rishi, that's an awesome name. I need you to be me for a second. You need a second to get into character, or you got it? All right, we're both handsome, so it works out. You ready? So he looks me directly in my face, y'all, and he says, young man, I've seen your spirit before. He said, I've seen the look in your eyes and the eyes of revolutionaries who I've walked with. And he said to me, he said, young man, I need you to be careful what it is that you wish for, because I know that you're powerful enough to get it. And I'm sitting in the room like, there's bumps on the back of my neck. You all know when you get goosies or chicken skin, you all know what I'm talking about? And I'm sitting in the front like, oh my goodness, right? That's the second best thing that happens that day. Y'all watch this. Can I ask your name? Farhan? Yeah, Farhan. I need you to be the governor for a second. Can you do that? Right? Our food was next to each other. And he looks the governor in the face, y'all, after he finished speaking to me. And he says, sir, I need you to get your affairs in order. Can I say, I'll just say this. He said, sir, I need you to get your affairs in order, because when this young man comes of age, your job might be in jeopardy. Y'all, and I'm sitting in this space, right? Like, I'm 22. I got some time before I'm legal governor age, you know what I mean? But here goes a hero, someone who I looked up to, someone whose work is directly responsible for the freedoms I was experiencing in that room that day. who saw me as a leader, right? And it floored me. And he goes on to give his speech afterward, and this is what he says. This is valuable advice that I hope that I get to leave you all with. So he looks at everybody in the room, goes on to give this speech. He talks about the civil rights movements and all the things that they had to go on through, and he said, young people, oftentimes folks will tell you that you have a responsibility to change the world through power. He said sometimes you're supposed to go and run for that space or to get a gold name tag or to do something of that. He said when we looked at the group we had with us, none of us held power in that way. He said the way in which we transformed the world was through influence. And he said our moral responsibility was to consistently impact the 3 feet around us. He said, and before you knew it, the way in which we practiced our influence, the way in which we felt the responsibility to the spaces around us, people started following what it is that we were doing. People found themselves in the movement as well. And with no political power, with not one of them holding a space of office, there was legislation that was passed on their behalf. There were people in the same way that I talked about those folks looking down on us, but us knowing who we were. In the same way that some people might tell you that you're too young, but you know exactly who it is that you are, right? There were people who didn't see them as human and they saw themselves as neighbor. There were people who didn't think that they should have the right to vote and they saw themselves as politically involved, right? And they knew that their work was to impact the 3 feet around them. And because of the work he was doing, because of the work that he did, I got the opportunity to be present where I was that day. I want you all to know that the people who came before you did what they could for you to be present in this space now. How many of you all know some of the things in this world are messed up? Can I ask adults to close the eyes in the room? How many of y'all know that adults who came before you messed some of this stuff up? Right? So I want you all to know that even though none of this around might be your fault, we all have a collective responsibility to do something about it. And the best way we can do so is by consistently impacting the 3 feet around us, being in collaboration with other people, and knowing, right, that this is a game of consistency that we will have to take on maybe for the remainder of our lives. So I appreciate each and every one of you. You all are equidistant in this room in age, many of you, than you are from my child. And so I thank you for the work that you'll do in this world. I thank you for giving up a Saturday to be present. And please exercise all of the resources that are available to you in this room, in that room, throughout the conference, right? Because there are people here to listen to what it is that you have to say. Please don't miss this opportunity. And I'll tell you in the same way that I've told every audience I've been in front of, because I love you, 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 and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. I appreciate you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Christian, for those inspiring words that help us see the purpose and value of today's conference. Before we send you to your workshops, everyone, please remember to attend your assigned workshop written in the back of your ID badge. Also, in case you have any questions, staff and volunteers are available to help you have a great conference experience.
We would also like to thank all of our community service providers here today. These include For Tomorrow, Boss Foundation, Bellevue Nourishing Network, Chinese American Multicultural Family Association, the City of Bellevue's Parks, Community Development, Diversity Advantage, and then Compassion 8 Innovation, Eastside Youth Coalition, Invest Ed, KCLS Lake Hills Teen Library, Leaders of Today, Youth Eastside Services and Latino Heat Program, Connect Little Master Club, and Splash Forward. Please visit them in between your workshops at any time that you are free. They have a lot of great resources and opportunities to share with you today, and this is your chance to reconnect with them.
And just a really quick reminder that the Lost and Found table, I know, really interrupting, but the Lost and Found table is at the registration table at the front, so if you lose something, it'll probably end up there. And it's time to go to your workshop, so take the same inspiration I felt inspired during Christian's speech to do your thing. See you back here at Concourse for lunch. Have a great conference.